and I'm a Director of Unicom. We're delighted to be hosting today's webinar. The topic today is digital transformation using Agile and ITIL. Our two presenters are Shirley Lacy and Darren Goldsby of ConnectSphere. We've worked with ConnectSphere as partners for many, many years, and I'm delighted to be hosting this webinar which they're presenting today. I should also just add briefly that both Darren and Shirley will be presenting in September, which is now next month, on 19th of September at the Digital Transformation and Change Management Conference in London. There's details on our website at unicom.co.uk. But what I'll do now, I'm going to hand over to Darren and Shirley. They'll tell you a little bit about the webinar, and then also I think we're going to begin with very few, I think just 3 questions to the audience, as it were, to put the whole webinar into context. So I will hand over to Darren and Shirley.
Thank you, Alec. Hi, my name's Darren Goldsby. As Alec said, we're from ConnectSphere, and we wanted to talk today about digital transformation. Digital transformation, could refer simply to the concept of going paperless, but I think actually it's an awful lot more than this. Digital transformation is about the changes that are associated with the application of digital technology, which is prevalent today in all aspects of human society. Digital transformation enables all sorts of innovation, new types of creativity that we've never even been able to think of before, in particular domains, rather than just enhancing, supporting traditional methods. And I think it affects individual businesses, whole segments of society, people, but also major groups such as governments, mass communications groups, media groups, art, medicine, pretty much anyone who interacts with a computing device, which I think 90% of the population do nowadays. Best practices for us are an industry-accepted way of doing something well, something that works and is the most effective way of understanding and delivering a process. In this webinar, what we want to look at is how adopting Agile and ITIL best practices enables organisations to deliver digital transformation. It's something that ConnectSphere specialises in. We specialise in service management and product lifecycle management. I'm Darren Goldsby. I've been in technology and leading technology for over 15 years within demanding and fast-paced environments. I've been working with best practices such as ITIL, Agile, DevOps, continuous integration for a number of years across media in the main. And I've built strong teams with digital innovation at the heart of what they do for a number of organisations, including Hearst Magazines, Rightmove, News International and associated newspapers.
I'm Shirley Lacy. I'm Managing Director of ConnectSphere. I've got a lot of experience in change management of service and applications across the life cycle, focusing really on delivering value from IT investments. So I help clients to deliver projects and changes faster into live service. So I'm actually co-author of the ITIL Service Transition publication, and I also represent the UK on international standards groups that develop service management software and cloud computing standards.
Okay, so on to what we're going to talk about today, and I think here's where we'd like to put some polls in front of you as well, just to understand where you sit in the digital transformation world and in best practice world as well. So today we want to talk about digital transformation, the challenges that companies are facing in this space, and what we think it means and what it effectively means for everybody in our industry. We want to also introduce Agile and help you understand how companies are using Agile methodologies to deliver great products and great services. Put through some introduction into ITIL as well at the same time, talking through how ITIL processes enable project delivery into service and how using those kind of best practice methodologies help delivering. Then finally we will talk about how Agile and ITIL work together and how they can coexist very well, and how using both sets of methodologies can ensure that solutions are delivered efficiently and effectively, not just the delivery into live service, but the ongoing service management and improvement thereon. So we'd like to start with the polls, really, if we could, just to get a feel for who is kind of using these best practices right now. So we'll start off to ask who is using ITIL best practice methodologies. Okay, so it seems like a number of you have voted, the majority of you have voted, in fact, and it would seem that the majority aren't currently using ITIL processes to enable their deliveries right now. Interesting. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Shirley, at all.
That is interesting. So what we'll try and do is to focus on people coming from that angle during the presentation.
Absolutely, yeah. We can talk more about how ITIL will help with that kind of delivery, and I firmly believe, as an advocate of both, that it really makes a massive difference to us. Let's move on to the second poll then. Who of you are using Agile software development methodologies? Okay, very close here. Looks like it's pretty much 50-50. In fact, it is exactly 50-50. I didn't even think that would be possible, but quite impressive. So there's quite a take-up of Agile methods right now, and I think it's a very popular way to deliver projects. It does feel like what we can do then perhaps is help to understand how both Agile and ITIL will help across the board, and having a good mix of people who know about it and haven't dealt with it before means I think that the conversation we're going to have fits in quite nicely. So lastly, I guess there's probably a small percentage of you here that are perhaps using Agile and ITIL together in a successful manner. So let's see how we're getting on there. Okay, this is telling. So far 90% of you have voted, and 100% are saying that they're not using Agile and ITIL process in a joined-up manner. It's not unusual, it's not unexpected that there's such a large majority of no's here. And I think it's not an easy thing to do, but hopefully what we can do over the coming 40 minutes or so is talk through how we believe that these things can work together, giving some good examples of of how that works. And I think hopefully there'll be some questions that come up around that subject that we can work through as well. Thank you very much for voting. Very useful information, and we'll come back to some of that a little later on. So onto our presentation today. An interesting study here from the MIT Center for Digital Business and from Capgemini, and I think digital transformation is a very, very interesting conversation that's going on right now. As organisations are seeking to grow and transform in the digital economy, they do need to evolve their structure. And according to this study, only 1/3 of companies have an effective digital transformation program. And what that means is someone who's dealing with not just the what that they need to do, but the how they're going to do it as well. And the what refers as much to the intensity and how much of digital plays a part in that business as exactly what they're doing. I think the rise of this digital transformation can be seen in 3 different ways. Firstly, you've got the kind of the consumerization of technology. People have devices at home and in their hands that are more powerful and more available to them than perhaps their own PCs at work and their mobile phones at work. And the expectation from your users is so much greater than it was some years ago. They expect digital technologies to just work and work incredibly well. You've also got the rise of e-commerce, and what we see now is that 20% of activities in terms of commerce across the UK are transacted online. It's not just the domain of Amazon these days. Anyone can sell anything to anyone, and people are far more comfortable buying and selling products and services online. And this makes the barriers to entry for businesses so different from what they were, and it transforms the way businesses work. Lastly, in this digital space, we see the rise of as-a-service offerings and the likes of Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon creating services, which means the barriers to entry for companies in terms of infrastructure and software are less than 0 now. It's astonishing. I can spin up an environment using Microsoft Azure in seconds that will allow me to have a database, a server, some storage, and web services without even entering my credit card details. But yet, only 1/3 of companies globally have this effective transformation program in place. The transformation requires evolving business models, evolving products and services, and what we're going to do is explore the best practices that enable that transformation. As I said, the web's made this barrier to entry in many businesses far lower than it was, and what we can do now is manufacture products all over the world in the cheapest possible location without visiting those places. Your rivals can spin up very quickly and can transform your business immediately. Decisions are being made quicker, business models are constantly changing, and organizations need to recognize and embrace this, ensure they stay ahead of their competition. So how do they do that? They deliver in an agile fashion. And Agile's not a new concept. It's a set of methods that can be traced back some 50 years to rapid application development methods. But the advent of the web and the explosion of web-based applications, which promote direct interaction with users and consumers, has really focused the software development world on this way of working. We're not talking about a single flavor of Agile, such as Scrum or Kanban, but a set of methods as a whole and their manifesto that allow us to deliver things quickly and iteratively. Agile methods promote learning from testing and responding to changes in business or in user needs, as opposed to working from a large requirement document, which has been built in advance. And an Agile team works best when it's relatively small, around 8 people perhaps, and includes all facets of the product development group, including the membership of the owner of that business unit, who takes responsibility for the changes in their product as they happen. It advocates team responsibility, and it pushes that team to take ownership of the product they're developing, which often manifests itself as people doing work outside of their usual roles, such as developers talking directly to end users about their needs. It's a very powerful way of working, and it ensures that both those owners and those operators of the product are involved through the entire life cycle. I mentioned that there's a manifesto that Agile works to. And I think it's important that we talk about that, because it's often the area which causes the most consternation between Agile and best practice service management like ITIL. And I think the manifesto, as is defined in this slide, is really important. In about 2001, 17 leaders in the field, including a very interesting guy to follow in this space, they met to find a common ground because they wanted to work in a more agile way to deliver projects better. What came out of that meeting was this manifesto. And the key parts of this manifesto are the 4 lines in the middle, where the group said that they value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. But the most important part of this manifesto is the end. While there's value on the items on the right, they value the items on the left more. And this is where things fall over. A lot of people think that Agile's about not delivering any documentation, not delivering tools and processes, and not following a plan. That simply isn't true. The important thing is that there is a recognition that getting working software out there and collaborating with customers is incredibly important and should be focused on. If your organization needs documentation, needs negotiation of contracts and so on, then they still need to be delivered through a project. It is simple. Can't escape those things. What the Agile project's saying is that we should focus on making sure that we collaborate with our customers and we work on this software properly, rather than focusing on contracts and forgetting those important factors. Customers who are implementing Agile to good effect are those who recognize this need, and they recognize the need for the product to continue to be manageable after delivery. It's not throwing over the fence. In most cases, an active member of an Agile team, in a quality Agile team, is a service manager or a systems operator, or somebody who is going to be responsible for the ongoing service. Experiences that I've had in both service management and digital development over the last 15 years have taught me that there are many common grounds between these methodologies. And what we're doing here is focusing on just a few to help you to understand how they link together effectively. These aren't the only areas that are common between them. There are a myriad of areas, but these ones I think are really important to talk about. Continuous service improvement. Any good best practice recognises the need to improve. And if you think about CSI in ITIL terms or in Agile terms, they're absolutely a mainstay. In Agile, you are constantly reviewing the way you are working, the way you are communicating, and the way that you are delivering as part of retrospective sessions so that you can achieve the optimal delivery results. This takes the form of, the daily stand-ups, talking about what you've done and what you haven't done and what's been difficult, but also on retrospective and sprint reviews. This is very similar to the way that ITIL approaches CSI to improve processes and delivery, where it sees issues and it reacts to them and manages them effectively. And a good CSI program in ITIL will work in a very similar fashion to the way it will in Agile, where they look at the way that things are running, be they processes or services or projects, and they ask very, very serious questions about what could be done to make them better and whether it's valuable to make those differences. Agile and lean principles, especially in software development, absolutely adopt the plan, do, check, act cycle that's so well spoken of in ITIL terms. And I think they share a real common bond in that need to constantly improve. Also, problem management is absolutely at the heart of Agile. Here where I'm working at the moment, we talk a lot about solving a problem, not delivering a product. By focusing in this way, we use the great disciplines of problem management to isolate root causes and plan actions for success, but also understand whether there's value in implementing fixes or working with workarounds. Understanding the value of the improvement versus the cost of the issues that we're facing is really important. We analyse issues to identify quick wins, which help us to deliver little and often iteratively to improve products and services, much like you would do in a standard ITIL processes of problem management. Change management as well is absolutely core to Agile working properly, and I think people forget this sometimes. In Agile, the concept of a product backlog, which is annotated as user stories, means that we can clearly assess what is changing with our project and our product and when it's changing. Defined cycles of change through iterations mean that planning is very simple, and a week before we're even thinking about an iteration, we should have a very clear idea of what any changes are going to be and their effect on the user, on the customer, on the consumer, and also on the ultimate operator of the service. Lastly, release and deployment for me is absolutely vital. The only way that Agile projects are successful in terms of ongoing operation is that we manage release and deployment correctly. There is a lot of talk of DevOps these days, but I don't think it's any different to what many quality Agile teams have been doing. Involving your operations team, getting your development team involved in the operations of the project using early life support, and planning and managing the way that we release, allowing us to release quickly and often, means that we can focus our time on the quality and allow us to deliver quickly. Using continuous integration tools and techniques means that we can remove much of the kind of manual effort of releasing software, which means that the rules for whether or not a software item is ready to be released are logic-based and not necessarily based on whether a person thinks it's okay to release or not. And these are at the heart of everything we do properly when we deliver in Agile methodologies, and I think they're at the heart of how we look at release and deployment from a ITIL perspective. So for me, there are a huge amount of common areas between Agile and ITIL, and I think they're very important that these are taken into consideration when we look at project delivery and product delivery using Agile methodologies. I'd like to pass over to Shirley now, who can talk a little more about ITIL, service management and how that works.
Thank you, Darren. Right, so ITIL service management best practices, I think one of the key things, they're actually used worldwide. The terminology is standard across the supply chain, and you're actually using language that people understand and suppliers understand. But service management, what is service management? It's actually a set of specialised organisational capabilities for providing value to customers in the form of goods and services. Well, that's quite interesting, really. What are those capabilities? Well, they're really kind of functions. So when we look at service operation, we're looking at teams like service desk, application management, technical management, and IT operations management, plus management team, continual service improvement roles. And it's how we actually do that across the service life cycle. It's really getting everybody to work together in a team so we can actually deliver superior services. But it's also about being effective and efficient, and that's really joining things together so we can all work together well. One of the key definitions we have within ITIL that drives a lot of things is a service. So that's a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes that the customers want to achieve without the ownership of specific cost and risk. And that really means that our customers and our users don't want any additional costs that they're not expecting. They don't want any additional risk like a security breach that they're not expecting, or for the service not to be available when they're hoping to use it for some business activity. So value is a lot of debate around value, and that really falls into the Agile and ITIL space. So value, as we define it in ITIL, is really based around the business outcome that we're trying to achieve, recognising as well that customer preferences and perceptions are really important, and I think that's where Agile delivers a lot in terms of we understand what customers will actually want and what their perceptions will be. ITIL breaks down value as well into two aspects, and value creation really comes from both aspects, and that's utility, which is functionality offered to fulfill a particular need, and that's really what we get out of using our software products. But there's also warranty. It's an assurance the service will be there and it will meet our performance requirements. So as we use the application globally, we'll get consistent performance, a known performance that we've actually agreed up front. It doesn't suddenly go slow, it doesn't suddenly have security breaches, it doesn't suddenly run out of capacity and fall over. And that's a key thing in ITIL, that we bring both of those together to deliver value. On the right-hand side, we have the service life cycle. And there we have service strategy at the centre of the life cycle. And we have the progressive stages of service life cycle: service design, service transition and service operation. And these represent a cycle really with projects going through change and transformation, so we're always changing. And then around the outside we have continual service improvement that helps place prioritised improvement programs and projects based on strategic best practices. So we go on to the next slide, Darren. I'm seeing just the quick poll on my screen.
Darren, I think you're sharing the poll result. Yeah, that's better. So.
Okay, so I'll just walk through the. Okay, I'll just walk through the life cycle. Shall we clearly understand that? So, ITIL focuses really, although service operation is the fourth one down, really what we're aiming for is to make sure we deliver value from service operation. So we understand business requirements at the top, coming in from our customers, maybe many customers, they may be internal or external customers. Quite often these days it's a mixture of both. And in service strategy, we understand what objectives we're trying to meet from the business requirements we've got, and also it's about looking across our portfolio of services. We understand the constraints under which we're working. So we have rules, regulations and laws that we have to abide by, and it's very important for any service provider to actually follow those. Quite difficult in a global world. Service strategy looks as well about across all of the resources develops strategies for services and the strategy for service management, and that would include both people within the organisation implementing service management best practices and Agile best practices. So we're all working together. That strategy would be set across all of our services. From strategy, we then get going into service design. That's about the design and development of services, but also of our service management processes. So if we put a new service into live, we may need to develop some special request fulfillment processes for a self-service portal, something like that. And that will have an impact on the way that the service desk operates and the way that requests are fed through in operation. So in service design, it looks at the principles and methods for converting the strategic objectives that we got from service strategy into portfolios of services and service assets, all the service components that we'll look at in a moment. So really focusing on new and changed services, very often delivered from projects. Then we go into, within there as well we have technical architectures and standards, and the big output from there is a service design package that we're going to look at in a moment as well. Then we have service transition. So this is where we actually develop our capability to transition new and changed services into operations. So we're taking the requirements from service strategy, feeding that through into service design, and then transition is about really make sure it happens, really should help Agile delivery into live operation. Copes a lot with the organisational changes and the operational changes to actually move from the current state to the new state. And then if that's successful, we go through release and deployment management there. As we're doing that, we capture information in our service knowledge management system that is at the spine of the life cycle that we see on the left here. A big part of this is configuration management as well. So we're going to test and deploy solutions. We need to understand all the dependencies between the services and the service components. So we go through from a successful transition, hopefully, into live operational service, and that's where we actually deliver the day-to-day service, where we want to achieve against targets. So if we've got agreed targets we're meant to be delivering, like response time to incidents, resolution time, response time to service requests, performance targets, continuity requirements, security targets, then we're delivering that in service operation. And that's really where we're delivering the value to the business. So the faster we can get through into service operation and speed our way through service design and transition, the faster we'll actually realise that value. And then Darren's already spoken about continual service improvement, key element of ITIL best practices. This is where we're continually baselining and benchmarking where we are, and it's about evolving our services and our service management capability, and we'll obviously have ongoing improvement actions and plans. So continual service improvement works right across the life cycle. It checks that service strategy was correct, checks that service design, can we improve anything in there, can we improve anything in transition, can we improve anything in service operation, or indeed are the things in service operation actually caused by something that happened in service design or transition. So it's a very proactive process, it's very inclusive, involves everybody in an organisation improving the way they work. One of the key deliverables we have is the service knowledge management system down the left-hand side, and I think this is a huge benefit of ITIL and really is where it helps Agile teams as well. In that service knowledge management system we find information about our service portfolio, that's all our services in the pipeline. In our service catalogue we have all our live services and information about retired services, and that's a very important element. It gives us visibility of information. Go to the next slide, Darren. I'm going to talk now about the service design package, and really this is a very key element. We get the service design right, and that's just working with Agile teams as well, then it will actually then transition correctly into live operation. So service design package, the key contents of that, although they're not all, it's not like a waterfall approach. This is really taking a baseline of these components out of service design. The way organisations work to produce it is different in each organisation. But what we're focusing on is the requirements for the service articulated in simple terms, and some of the principles that we have in the Agile Manifesto we also have in ITIL. You know, it's not about documenting everything to the hilt. We use the thing about doing is more important than documenting. So we look at service design aspects. So we get the actual service model. This is the interaction we're hoping to get out of strategy. So strategy defines the high-level service model, the interaction with the customer. Then in service design, we design the service and its components, this functionality, changes to the requirements, the service levels, changes to management requirements. So maybe we need a new report for the management dashboard. And it's also about change to the operational services and the way that maybe the IT operations team works. The big focus for the service design package, which I think is really important for digital transformation, is understanding if we put this thing into live, are we actually ready to support it, manage and improve it? And whenever I've seen in my career major transformations go on, you cannot put what's meant to be kind of a regulated service through low maturity processes. So really it helps to understand, are we ready for this kind of product that we're delivering or service? And if we're not ready, then we plan for that and we take that issue and work on it. We should also have a service lifecycle plan that includes the timescales and phasing for the transition and operation of the service. This is obviously often managed through project management processes, but it's really about making sure we engage with those transition and operational teams and people to make sure they're really ready for all of that and they actually have it on their agendas as well. When we're in service design, we have to make sure we can understand the testing requirements for the whole service to go into live operation, or indeed a change service. And by trying to reuse testing plans, then that helps us to reduce rework. We also have a service operational plan, so how, when it gets into service operation, are they expected to work? Do they need any extra resources, maybe on the service desk and support teams, to support a major take-on through a new software product? And service acceptance criteria is so important that we agree these service acceptance criteria up front. It's completely open and people are helped in terms of their understanding, so good communication about what those acceptance criteria are. You go on to the next slide, Dan. Now here what we're looking at is the service components that are a key part of what we put in service design. So we've got the user story here. This just shows that the user story that we're delivering from Agile projects, they depend on the user interface and the way that user interface is delivered, whether it be on a tablet or other mobile device or a desktop. Under there we've got web services. We may have third-party services and data services. And really within ITIL best practices, when we're looking at design, we're looking at designing all of that together, making sure that every layer and every service within that service works together. Go on to the next slide, Darren. This slide showing how Agile and service lifecycle stages work together. And although I've shown service strategy, service design, service transition going through, it's like a waterfall, it's not like that at all. So we have within the Agile lifecycle at the top, we've got conceive the software products, then we go into design and prototyping, it's where we really understand the user needs and we're proving the concepts that we had in the conceive stage. From there, once we're really sure what we're going to deliver, we go into the delivery stage where we've got iterative development pilots and early life support. So it's really just proving that what we've just developed will work, fixing things before they create any issues in live operation. And then when we're actually happy with that, and everybody is happy with that, then we go into operation and improvement of the service as the last phase. Now I've mapped onto the ITIL service lifecycle underneath, and we've got ITIL service strategy that really is on the left-hand side, the that's where it matches to the conceive stage. And from the service strategy, where we set the requirements across our portfolios of services, we go for a new or a change service into service design. Now really, service design is working with service strategy, making sure it feeds back as requirements. Service transition's involvement happens within service strategy, through into service design, and driving it through release and deployment into live operation. And at the bottom, we can see that service operations staff are actually involved right from the design stage. They go through operation, through pilots and early life support into operation. So we're starting to see some overlap here between pilots and early life support in both Agile lifecycle and the ITIL service lifecycle. You go on to the next slide, Darren. This is a high-level summary, really, about what we see from our own experiences of projects and organisations that implement Agile without ITIL and what the risks are and the issues are that they may face. So it's just based on our experience. So Agile without ITIL, an Agile project has to establish basic capabilities to support the desired change. Delivery may not take into account the service operational needs. And then when we look at the cost, quality and time estimates, they're very often less accurate. So quite often projects deliver late, they're not on time, they're quite often over budget when they get into the live environment. I think my general rule is that without best practice you can deliver 70 or 80% and then you struggle to deliver the last 30%, which is interesting. There's also an increased dependency on related risks because Agile teams may not be able to see and manage dependencies with other services. What we find with Agile projects, they're likely to focus on utility improvement over warranty improvement. So the utility is making sure that we deliver what the service can be used in a way that the customer needs. But we need the warranty, we need the service to be available, continuous, with the right security underneath all of that. And there's a different focus with Agile. So let's look at the right-hand side, Agile with ITIL best practices. Using both together gives a number of benefits that both Darren and I have seen, and it's very noticeable, the difference. So if you want to be a great service provider, and a software product provider, then it's really important to look at these things. So first one is Agile with ITIL. You're working in an organisation where the service provider's established service management capability really helps Agile projects to identify issues up front. Information about services in our service portfolio and service knowledge management system is visible and available. It helps all Agile projects to do that, but then establishing and adopting service design and transition capabilities really means less work for Agile projects. So release and deployment's already set up. There should be automated tools already in place. There is a service asset and configuration management system, so you can find out things about the scope and structure of the services. Are there any dependencies that you need to know about? But the second bullet point down on the right-hand side, Agile projects do need to deliver within the agreed constraints and controls. But really it's about understanding those up front and having early warning of those, not finding out at the end that there wasn't enough budget to do something or that you'd forgotten to include something in the service acceptance criteria. So it's really making sure we do things up front. What we find generally, and I think it's really important because we're going to go through such huge transformation with the digital transformation, using Agile with ITIL enables quicker delivery into live. You've basically got the Agile team pushing their product into live and you've got the live operational services pulling it through service transition. There's better coordination of Agile projects with other service changes and therefore less risk. And really, the whole life cycles, there is more effective and efficient delivery from concept through to closure. And most importantly, we improve value creation by delivering both utility and warranty. And that's where customers really see the value. Go to the next slide, Darren.
Okay. So I think there's no single recipe for success.
Darren, do you want to do this one?
Sorry, yeah. There isn't a single recipe for success with here at all. It really depends on your organisation and how you work. But the principal ingredients are pretty much your common sense. And as Shirley said, it's an awful lot about understanding upfront what's needed so that you can be aware and understanding early when there are changes and things going on, which fits in very clearly with the way that we work in an agile method. You know, we're always considering when we're working in an agile way that we need to respond to the needs of that user. And that user may not be the consumer of the service, it may well be the operator of the service as well. So the earlier that we understand the changes that may need to happen in order to satisfy their needs, and that's the need of the guy with the budget as well, then the more that we can affect. We know that an agile project doesn't proceed in a straight line, it goes in a direction towards success that bears through paths, and those paths happen on a regular basis as we iterate and learn. And the core fundamentals around ITIL, and especially the service design elements, help us to really understand what that path is going to be and affect a change to the project as early as possible. So, Agile's a methodology built around communication, and I think that most of the things that we need to do to embrace these two sets of disciplines and get them working together is to think about communication as well as ownership and accountability. An Agile team will have a daily stand-up, they'll have fortnightly sprint reviews, they'll have visible charts showing their burn-down rates, what they've been delivering, what's happened next in terms of product backlogs, and they'll show milestones and activities. They will also have regular reviews and retrospectives where they'll be monitoring their performance and their success. And it's really important that, and when I see this going well, I see good organisations inserting their operational teams into this process. Great organisations actively seek to place operators of service and managers of service into every one of their Agile teams. That's not always possible because Agile teams expect the people to be involved 100% or as close to 100% of the time as they can. But great teams absolutely involve their operational teams and involve the processes that those guys work to within their Agile projects. There's no better way to ensure success than to insert somebody in. Agile communication methods are many and varied. Keep looking, check out the board. Has it changed? Are there different pieces to the puzzle now? Do we need to think about those in terms of service, and in terms of our strategy, and in terms of our security, and so on and so forth? It's really important that from an operational perspective you're inserted and embedded into the project. If they're not involved in that team, then we need to be understanding the needs around service design, and at the very least Agile team needs to be involved in that service design. So if you've got an Agile Scrum Master or a product owner, they're absolutely involved in the design of the service from a delivery perspective as much as they are from a user and consumer perspective. And involving the team, this isn't a one-way conversation. This isn't about dropping service teams into a project. It's about dropping project teams into a service as well. If you look at the disciplines and the methods, user interactions are really important to Agile teams. So dropping into how an operator will manage a service is just as important as dropping into how a user will use it in terms of understanding what's going to be required from a delivery perspective. So Agile teams need to be part of that service design as well. And you need to define and agree and commit to early life support requirements. If you're delivering an Agile project, then you're likely to be delivering working, functional pieces of software on a regular basis. Maybe weekly, that may be fortnightly, that may be daily. Depends on the way that you integrate and you manage your software release. So you need to agree and commit to that. Now, there's no better way of understanding how your project is working than to be involved in its support and its management. So you deliver a piece of functioning software, you're absolutely involved in early life support of that functioning software. And there's no Agile team wants to be spending their time fixing problems when they're not delivering new products, so they need to focus on delivering the right product and getting them right first time. So embedding operational teams into the Agile team helps them to understand the pain that early life support is going through. Embedding the Agile team into the support of the product helps them to understand the pain that the operators are going through as well. And it really helps to improve the product and understand where we're going wrong from an Agile project perspective, and get that fixed as early into the project life cycle as we can. And frankly, that's the key to this, making sure that the teams communicate, that they work together, they absolutely take ownership, especially when it comes down to early life support and the design of the service as well. Using the specialist release and deployment people that we have within our teams and the processes that we have help us to understand how we can deliver on an Agile perspective and make this work together. And I guess that's exactly how we believe that Agile and ITIL processes can work together to deliver great products and services.
Well, thanks very much, Darren and Shirley. That was a very useful webinar. I just would like to kind of go back to the audience now and see if we've got some questions. Just opening the question box. I've got one question come in actually for Darren Darren in particular. Somebody's asking, Darren, you mentioned DevOps at the beginning of the webinar. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think again it's another case. Cloud and DevOps are the two phrases that annoy me most in the world right now, because cloud's been around since, well, before Hotmail came along, and DevOps has been around since good operators and good designers and good developers got together and worked out how on earth they support this beast that they're creating. So DevOps, for me, is a kind of an ethos rather than a physical thing. It's about operational and development people working together to understand what each other does, and making sure that we use development resources to give the best that we can for the operators as they go forward. So making sure that as well as building the product, we build the tools that enable us to deliver that product effectively. There's, again, a real problem with many services that get delivered in a poorly structured approach is that they'll deliver a great service to the consumer, but what they won't deliver is the tools and the methods and the mechanisms for supporting that service. So what you end up with is a service that costs an absolute fortune to run and maintain because it's constantly being fixed or played around with, whereas the consumer thinks it's a great thing, and that's not really effective for a business. It's costing too much to manage that service. So what DevOps does is it bridges the gap that you thought of as throwing over the fence. And it says, as a group of people, developers and operators, how do we work together to create an efficient service, which means that when we deliver a change to it, it happens effectively, cleanly, smoothly, without difficulty, and when we have to operate that service and we have to configure that service, it's managed in an effective approach. I think it's really as simple as that.
Thanks for that, Darren. I've got actually another question that's come in. The integration of any models, CMMI, RUP, etc., which ITIL needs to be seamless. What's so special about Agile and ITIL?
Oh, what's so special about it? I'm not sure anything special about it at all. I think it's just a lot of people are implementing Agile methodologies right now. And when I see them implemented badly, what I often see is that the operators of the services are saying, look, we don't understand what's going on here. We're getting given this new stuff, and we don't know how to support it. We don't know how it works. We don't know what the requirements are from a service perspective. And that's not really very helpful. So this is an area that we think is really important and really needs to be focused on. Whatever the methodology is for delivery, whether it be Scrum, which is the kind of the de facto standard, it seems, especially in the UK for Agile delivery, or any kind of development methodology that requires iterative and fast-paced delivery, we need to manage it properly.
I think it's also, where do we see evidence? I mean, one of the things is that ITIL, people implementing ITIL, many of them go and actually achieve ISO 20000 certification. That's the International Standard for Service Management. And because they've actually done that, they've got this absolutely embedded continual service improvement way of working. And many of them produce case studies, and many of those actually demonstrated they could reduce the delivery time for delivering product into live service by as much as 50% for all of their products. So I think there's a lot that that we've seen in both Agile and ITIL delivering in practice. So there isn't anything special about any particular best practice. We just see a lot of organisations using both of these. The ones that use them successfully are using them well together.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one more question. What service design tools do you typically use within Agile and ITIL?
I'm not sure what tools. From an Agile perspective, we tend to, I mean, you know, when I'm seeing it working effectively, we look very much at the service design processes around ITIL for inspiration, really. But, you know, when we're looking at a service design, we're not just looking at the ITIL elements and the service management elements of service design, we're looking at the consumer elements as well. So, again, there isn't a tool per se that I can think of, but what we do tend to do is look at the processes we have for service management and the processes we have for product management and bring those together and say, okay, what is this thing we're about to build and how do we design it effectively? It isn't about a huge upfront design task with a massive requirements document, as I said. It's about embracing all of those things and working out when you can deliver each element.
I totally support that view. But I suppose one of the key things, though, in today's world is actually we're going to go with a digital transformation, which is huge. We do need to focus on self-service mechanisms, making sure that they work. And therefore, the tool that's already currently running for support and embrace that and look at automation of that. And also the other area that I see is event management that really helps us to predict what's going to happen to our service and manage it. So before something falls over, we know about it and we can do something proactively. Yeah. So it's not so much design tools, which I think are fairly traditional things that people use. It's really a question of understanding what we want to automate, not just for the consumer, but for the service organisation when we're in service design.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we're going to deliver something as part of that, so if we see something out of service design that we need to deliver, then it needs to become a user story which sits in the backlog of the product so that we can start to manage it properly. So in that respect, any backlog products that you might use, so any standard products you might use for managing your backlog can be managing the elements of that service design that needs to be delivered. And then you just prioritise those effectively and deliver them when you need to.
Thanks, Darren and Shirley. I'm just conscious of the time. We've actually got quite a lot of questions coming in, so perhaps if we just pick one or two, because I apologise we can't answer everybody's question, but delighted if anybody would like to contact us afterwards, we can put you in touch with Darren and Shirley. One question we have, that's got an interesting question. Should service delivery staff be included into Agile teams or just include services considerations into acceptance criteria? Would you like to answer that?
Get the people in the teams.
I agree.
Yeah, straight away, get the people in the teams. You have to. Even if they can only commit to a certain amount of time, they should be in the stand-ups in the mornings, because that's the way you know exactly what's going on a day-to-day basis. They should be in the sprint reviews at the end of every sprint, so they can see what's being delivered and have a say in whether or not it meets their needs, and look at the product backlog and the boards on a regular basis. Get them embedded. This is about face-to-face communication. This is about teams understanding each other. And when you see somebody, you see their bags under their eyes because they spent all night managing the product that you've just delivered, and they're sitting in front of you and they're looking tired, you're going to feel an emotional connection to want to make that a better product. So get them in the team.
Thank you. I think we've just got one more question we've really got time for. I apologise again for running over slightly. I think this is actually a really interesting question. The question is, switching to an Agile development often causes political manoeuvring, since it's not just a change of methodology, it pervades the entire enterprise. Does including ITIL mitigate, exasperate, or affect this? I'll give you a moment to think about that one.
Definitely.
Well, I think it's actually, from my perspective, the organisations where I see it do it well, it actually happens through service strategy, which is where we just change the whole way of working. So ITIL is not now just being used within IT organisations, it's being used out with the business. And if you look at the business and the technology strategy together, which I believe we have to do for digital transformation, that that's where it actually happens. So if anybody's interested in that, those best practices will help to actually look at that. And Darren, you've had experience with that as well, haven't you?
Absolutely, and I would say that I think in a company where there is going to be some political fallout from a major business change, then there's always going to be that. But what these two processes do is bring together most of the technology functions and get them working together and speaking and singing from the same hymn sheet. So if you're going to have fractions within the departments, let's not have fractions within the IS department. Let's make sure that that central or distributed information technology team is speaking from the same book and are working together to deliver great products. You'll never solve the rest of the political issues with this, but you will at least make sure that your IT teams are working together as one.
Great, well, thank you very much. It's a good set of questions. I'm sorry we couldn't answer everybody, but obviously we're run slightly over time, so I just really should wrap things up and thank you all for joining today, and also in particular Darren and Shirley for delivering the webinar. We will be making a recording available. We'll send you a link to that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to meet Darren and Shirley in person, as it were, they will be presenting at our Digital Transformation and Change Management Conference on the 19th of September. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.